In 1848, the United States signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, annexing a massive stretch of the American Southwest. Almost overnight, the geopolitical map was redrawn by a new, rapidly expanding federal power. The settlers pushing westward brought with them the doctrine of manifest destiny. The baseline expectation for the indigenous populations already living on this land was simple: step aside or be eradicated. But one prominent Navajo war leader refused to step aside. Born near the Bears Ears Buttes in modern-day Utah, his people called him Hashke Naba, the angry warrior. History remembers him as Manuelito. For years, Manuelito stood as a physical and psychological wall. He led raiding parties and defensive stands, determined to break the momentum of a military machine that considered its own expansion inevitable. The ideological clash over westward expansion quickly turned into a tangible fight over physical resources. In 1855, the U.S. Army built Fort Defiance in New Mexico, right on top of prime grazing pastures the Navajo relied on to feed their livestock. The post commander decided the Army needed the grass for their own animals. When the Navajo refused to abandon the pastures, the commander ordered his soldiers to shoot 60 of Manuelito's horses and over 100 of his sheep. Manuelito retaliated with precise, calculated force. Gathering his warriors, he launched a fierce nighttime assault that nearly overtook the heavily garrisoned U.S. fort. He won the battle, but the reality of the broader war was setting in. No matter how many skirmishes the Navajo won, the United States possessed an inexhaustible supply of soldiers and weapons to replace the ones they lost. The warrior who risked everything over a single grazing pasture would eventually sign away his autonomy and sent his children to the very schools designed to erase his culture. The path from the battlefield to those signatures began with a shift in the nature of the war itself. By 1863, the U.S. military realized they were struggling to defeat the Navajo in traditional combat, so they pivoted their strategy. They stopped fighting a war of skirmishes and started the campaign of total economic devastation. The execution of this plan fell to Colonel Kit Carson. Under orders, he was instructed to wage a scorched earth campaign across the Navajo homeland. The soldiers moved systematically through the canyons. They burned Navajo homes, destroyed their crop fields, and slaughtered every sheep and horse they could find. Their goal was to induce a widespread famine. As starvation set in, Navajo bands began to surrender. Manuelito and his followers retreated deep into the harsh, freezing mountain terrain, managing to hold out longer than anyone else. But eventually, the food ran out entirely. Manuelito faced an impossible choice: die fighting with absolute honor and guarantee the total extinction of his people, or surrender to an enemy he deeply despised. He chose to surrender. In 1864, Manuelito and thousands of his people were subjected to a forced relocation that became known as the Long Walk. The military marched them hundreds of miles from their ancestral homeland to an internment camp in New Mexico called Bosque Redondo. Once inside, disease and starvation ripped through the population. As this chart shows, more than 2,000 Navajo died in captivity. The environment itself offered no relief. The alkaline water made people sick, the soil was too poor to grow sufficient crops, and families huddled together in makeshift structures against the bitter cold. The disaster at Bosque Redondo made it clear: traditional military resistance had become obsolete. Physical survival now required a political weapon. By 1868, Manuelito had shifted his approach, laying down the rifle for the diplomatic brief. Alongside other Navajo leaders, Manuelito traveled thousands of miles to Washington, D.C. They went directly to the seat of the U.S. government to negotiate the terms of their survival. The Treaty of 1868 broke from standard federal policy. While other tribes were being pushed onto distant, unfamiliar territory, the Navajo secured a legal return to their own mountains. The Navajo extracted this victory by weaponizing the very tragedy the government had created, leveraging the moral and financial failure of Bosque Redondo into a permanent legal right to return home. Securing the treaty was only the first step. Manuelito had to ensure the United States didn't tear it up. To do that, he took on a heavy political burden, even accepting an appointment as the head of the Navajo police to regulate his own people and prevent further raids. Then, he made his most controversial and agonizing strategic decision. Manuelito began advocating for Western education. He reasoned if the next generation of Navajo were going to survive the white man's world, they had to understand it from the inside out. To prove his commitment to this new path, Manuelito sent his own 2 sons across the country to the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. Shortly after arriving at the boarding school, both of his sons contracted illnesses and died. Manuelito's legacy is written into the geography of the modern Southwest. His willingness to trade his warrior's pride for a diplomat's compromise is why the Navajo remain on the land where he was born.